It's time for another Retro Reach review. Today's episode is about Mahjong 64, which, surprisingly, is not a sequel to Super Mahjong, the first game I reviewed. An early title in the Nintendo 64's life, Mahjong 64 was developed and published by Koei, now Koei Tecmo, most known for the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Dynasty Warriors series of games. First impressions of the game were good. The opening sequence is reminiscent of a mid-90s anime opening. After creating your new profile, you'll have a bird's eye view of the Mahjong Academy you'll be attending. There are 5 buildings: the main Academy Hall, the Tournament Hall, the Administration Building, the Students' Lounge, and the Library, as well as a gate to exit the game. The main Academy Hall is where things start to go south for this game, and fast, if you're not already fluent in Japanese. There are 6 subjects you must complete, each with a different focus, such as defensive play or speed play. I don't know what letter grades you need to pass or what comes after, because it was too difficult for me to understand what the objectives were. Each subject requires multiple games to be completed before a grade is assigned. If you can read Japanese, this might be a great game mode, otherwise you're probably out of luck. The Tournament Hall is locked by default. I'm assuming once you do well enough in the Academic Hall you can move on to the Tournament Hall, but since I wasn't able to, we'll have to skip this part. The Administration Building tracks your progress in each of the subjects, showing your current grade and how many individual objectives have been completed, as well as your statistics such as placement percentages, average point values, percentages of Yaku, and so on. This could be really useful if you're trying to find weak points in your playstyle. It also displays statistics for your opponents so you can better understand how to defeat them. The last 2 options in the Administration Building are records and awards for playing in the academic modes. Next up is the Student Lounge, where you have the option of Open Play and Tournament. Open Play is your typical 4-player free play, so we'll skip past that part and go to the tournament. This option puts you in an 8-player tournament, where the top 2 players from each table move on to the finals table. There isn't anything special here, but it is nice to have a free play option other than the standard 2 or 4-player games. So far, the game has been pretty bad if you can't read Japanese, but here, things start to pick up. In the library, you have access to different study guides to improve your overall Mahjong skills. From top to bottom, we have the Beginner Study Guide, Advanced Study Guide, Yaku List, and Mahjong Dictionary. The study guides give you a hand, usually some other information such as Dora and wind directions, and asks you a simple question. After you've answered the question, it shows you how to find the correct answer. This is sometimes more useful for Japanese speakers, but with enough effort, you can usually figure out what it's trying to teach you. The questions are grouped together and always in the same order, so once you know what the question is and how to read the other information it gives you, you're pretty much set. For the beginner's guide, the first 10 questions are, what is your weight? This is a tremendously helpful game, as it helps you not only identify what your weights are, but identify different patterns of tiles to maximize your weights. For example, question 7 shows you how to create a powerful 5-way weight. The next 10 questions ask you to find the point value of a hand, given the composition, how the hand was won, roll or tsumo, prevailing wind, seat wind, and Dora. Something to keep in mind here is that it's telling you the actual Dora, not the Dora indicator, so it's possible to see 5 of one tile here. This is something I'm actually pretty terrible at, so I'll likely be coming back to this over and over again to practice. The Advanced Study Guide starts off by asking you to select the tile that would complete the hand for maximum points. Eventually, there will be more than one tile that can complete the hand, so keep an eye out for multiple weights. These start out pretty easy, but quickly become overwhelming if you're not intimately familiar with each Yaku. The last group of questions are true-false. You're presented with a scenario, including hand composition, wins, Dora, Han, Fu, and total points, and a simple true-false option. This is really just an extension of the first set of questions, so don't let it scare you if you can't read it. Just look for the familiar words like Dora and Sumo. The next training tool in the library is the Yaku List, with examples and explanations. The names are all in Japanese, which makes it somewhat difficult to find what you're looking for, but it can also be beneficial since you'll need to identify these names when playing this and other Reach games. Beginners should cross-reference the Yaku here with the list online to become familiar with them. The last option is a glossary which uses Japanese text to explain Japanese words. If you can't read Japanese, I would skip this part entirely and use an English-based guide online. So we know the game modes and the options, but what is the actual gameplay like? It's somewhere between mediocre and poor. The controls are a little clunky, making poor use of the Nintendo 64 controller compared to other games like Konami's Mahjong Master. The controls feel very much like a Super Nintendo game, making use of only the D-pad, shoulder buttons, and A and B buttons. The C buttons scroll the screen in different directions, revealing no new information, and the whole middle of the controller, the thumbstick, Z button, and start button, go completely unused. By default, the gameplay is really slow, with a terrifying hand animation picking up tiles and placing them in the discard pile. Typical games take about 1 second between when you discard a tile and when you draw your next tile. Here it takes 6 seconds, which adds up over the course of the 4 East-South games you have to play for each class subject. The music in the game isn't bad, but it isn't good either. It's tolerable and changes from hand to hand, which is good, but the synth instruments leave a lot to be desired. Most Super Nintendo games have better sounding instruments than this game. Actually, a lot of this game feels like it was originally designed for the Super Nintendo. Between the music, the pointless scrolling, which was often used in Super Nintendo games due to the limited resolution, limited sound effects, strange hand animations, which look like a bunch of 3D sausages when discarding, but a terrible pre-rendered animation when reaching, everything feels like it was originally designed for the Super Famicom, then ported to the N64. The game was released in April of 1997, just 10 months after the launch of the N64 in Japan, so it doesn't seem like an unreasonable guess that this was originally a Super Famicom game. Even still, day one launch titles should look better than this. Pressing B during the game, then selecting the bottom option, opens the settings menu so you can turn the music and sound effects on or off, switch between mono and stereo sound, disable the freakish hand animations, and increase or decrease game speed. Disabling the animations and increasing the game speed does help with the game, but not enough to fix it. Overall, I give this game 3 out of 5. The only saving grace for this game is the study guides. Other than that, it's a mediocre at best game that I can't really recommend. Don't pay more than $1 to $2 for this. Thank you for watching this episode of Retro Reach Review. If you found the information helpful, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos as they come out, hit the subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, you know where to leave them.